Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. All right, welcome back for another episode of the Freight 360 podcast. We got a good episode today. We get a lot of requests, I guess you could say, for content on lead generation and prospecting. So today's episode is technically going to be titled 10 Ways to Find Shippers, and we'll have a little bonus 11th way at the end. But we'll probably weave in some prospecting discussion in there too, because the two go hand in hand. But it's going to be a good episode, especially for those of you that are brand new to the industry, or if you're trying to grow your book or hire somebody on and you're trying to give them some guidance. But as always, please leave us that review. Hit the like button on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Ask us more questions to continue to give us the content that you guys want to hear every week in and out. So, and share us with all your friends. So we've been growing. We love it. Things have been going great. Ben, what's new with you down in South Florida?
Oh, we are turning the corner into summer. In fact, the weather reports even just started to change, like as of this week, where they started to add in the muggy index and the humidity index and the feels like this. And today was the first. In fact, I had to run to an appointment this afternoon, and today was the first day since last summer when I jumped out of my car and my glasses just fogged up like you're walking into a freezer, and I couldn't see anything. And I'm like, summer's here.
That's it, man. I'm on the road this week. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm in a hotel room here, and I'm just north of New York City. I'm doing some Army stuff this week, but nevertheless, we are always here to give you guys great content. But this episode is brought to you by Blue Book Services. Are you looking to quickly identify qualified sales prospects? Looking to develop trusted, sustainable business partnerships? Well, look no further. The Lumber Blue Book is an online directory and credit resource for the lumber and forest products industry, covering mills, manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers. Their database of over 23,000 lumber companies can be searched and segmented to develop sales and marketing campaigns. Members receive access to real-time credit and business information for companies throughout the industry. To learn more, go to lumberbluebook.com and click join today. That's lumberbluebook.com. Speaking of Lumber Blue Book and Produce Blue Book, great way to find leads. So.
Yep.
Oh, man. All right. So let's kick it off with a little sports here. It's a big week. I know the NFL's not started up yet, and that's my favorite. But we have a ton going on. All right. First off, if you follow hockey or you follow basketball, conference championships on both sports right there are kicking off this week. So hockey, and this is one, I feel like I assume this is probably your team, but the Florida Panthers, it's probably like the fan base down there. When I was down in Florida a few weeks ago, we went to a Sabres and Florida Panthers game, and had the Sabres won that game, they would have made the playoffs, but they didn't. Anyway, as literally the lowest wild card spot, the Panthers have advanced all the way through to the conference finals. They're playing the Carolina Hurricanes. So if they win, they're going to go to the Stanley Cup, which is insane. And then on the western side, you got Vegas and the Dallas Stars. So if you're a hockey fan, look forward to that. On the basketball side, Denver Nuggets and the LA Lakers have already kicked off. And then we've got Miami playing Miami and Boston. So Boston Celtics, Miami Heat, and then Denver Nuggets and LA Lakers. So according to ESPN, at least. Do you follow? When it gets to championship time, do you follow either of those at all, or no?
Not really, to be honest. And it just depends on what I've got going on for the most part. Usually, like work wise. So.
Like I enjoy sports in general, so I like to watch some of the big games. The other stuff, like the Preakness, is this weekend. Obviously, we had the Kentucky Derby a couple weeks ago, so now the Preakness, which is the second leg in the Triple Crown, and then the PGA Championship in Rochester, New York this weekend. I will be in Rochester. I got some friends coming in that have tickets, and I have a ticket for Sunday if I'm able to go. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it for sure, but I do have a ticket if I want
I'm
to go to
super
the
jealous.
championship round on
For
Sunday.
Sunday too. That's fantastic, man.
No. Dude, here's what's weird. So, no joke. Last night, I'm in a hotel, walking down the hallway, and I had a hat on, and I hadn't shaved in a couple days, so like had a little bit of scruff. Somebody walked by me and confused me with Brooks
Justin
Koepka.
Thomas? Brooks
No.
Koepka? I would have said Justin Thomas.
No, it was like Brooks, and I was like, first of all, I was in Albany. I was not in Rochester. I was in Albany. I was like, no. And then she like did a double take. I was like, oh, never mind. I'm not his height. I don't have, as you would call it, his punchable face, unless maybe you think I have a punchable face too. But definitely not Brooks Koepka. But it's cool seeing. I think is him and Justin Thomas are both playing in it this weekend, and they're live golfers, right? So it's like one of the
not Justin Thomas.
Oh no, that's Dustin Johnson, right?
Yeah, Dustin Johnson. Yeah.
I
think you kind of resemble Justin Thomas, by the way. If there was any PGA player that I would say you probably look most like, it's probably him.
Justin Thomas.
Or maybe it's because I read an article about him a couple hours ago on my lunch break.
Do you have any predictions or thoughts about the PGA Championship?
I had John Rahm's a big favorite. I was reading earlier today, Cameron Young is a sleeper favorite at 30-1. And the article I read earlier, I just pulled up again. Stars who definitely won't win. Cameron Smith says it's not that he's necessarily playing poorly, but the number 8 golfer in the world right now is not a great fit for a golf course that's going to be incredibly demanding off the tee. Smith is a much better fit for the U.S. Open or Open Championship. So we will see.
I will be playing at a course in the area Saturday late afternoon. So I'll get a little bit of golf in on PGA weekend.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's much better than that.
What I have heard, so it's Oak Hill is the course in Rochester, and I've heard that the rough is so thick. Like some guy was explaining to me, he's like, imagine a regular rough. And then they went in there and they planted twice as much grass, and then it just got super thick. And then they did it again. He's like, it's that dense of grass once you're off the green, just like 2 feet. But it's extremely difficult to chip on. So got to find those greens, otherwise it's tough.
Yeah, my little cousin, I think, had the U.S. Open qualifier on Monday. As you were saying that, it reminded me of him explaining the roughs at some of those tournaments, the Open, which he's been a couple of times, not played in the Open, but gone to it. And it's like walking through the rough is difficult, let alone swinging a golf club through a ball that is buried in the grass. So
yeah, wild. All right, well, that's what you got coming up for sports. Let's give a shout out to DAT and get into it.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads and trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They have the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the industry. You'll get real-time rates on every lane, so you'll know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Plus, you get instant access to top bids from qualified carriers around the country. If you have not signed up yet, please check out the show notes. You'll get a free month of the platform, and you will help give us some support.
Largest load board, great way to source trucks, great way to post loads, get reviews on carriers. Highly recommend DAT. All right, without further ado, let's get into how, some 10 different ways to find shippers as a freight broker. So, and these are in no specific or particular order. These are just, they're laid out randomly. So they're not like prioritized. So the first one I have here is social media. And some people think like, what? I can't go on Facebook and find leads. But the reality is there's a very tactical way to use social media platforms like Facebook and like LinkedIn, right? There's groups. There are groups where people will network in there, and you could literally join one of these groups. Like, let's say, for example, you want to prospect heavy equipment, right? And you hop in some Facebook group or LinkedIn group for professionals that work in the, that heavy equipment, that kind of thing, right? They're that kind of association or organization. You can actively participate, share information, or just be a fly on the wall and just learn, right? Who are these companies that are interacting with one another? who are the individuals that are posting, right? What are they saying? Are they talking about the price of things? Are they talking about the transportation of things? Are they just talking about the industry in general, right? But it's a great way to kind of sneak your way into learning about an industry firsthand from people that work in it.
Absolutely. You're going to see the common issues that the drivers have and the carriers have, which ding, 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 guess what? Tend to be the same issues that the shipper's facing, right? So it gives you great insight to what's going on the ground, like actually moving these things. You're going to get insight into how these things are secured, how they shouldn't be secured, right? You're going to see plenty of pictures on things that have gone wrong and things that weren't done correctly. You will hear, again, it's social media, people bitching and complaining. But some of that in there is relevant to their industry, to their niche, what is happening, where their frustrations are. Because guess what? Like, that's the one thing about our industry. No matter what your side you're on, whether you're a carrier, a shipper, or if you're in the middle as a broker, right? One of these things affects all three, right? Like, hey, if carriers are complaining about dwell time and getting loaded, that's a shipper problem. But brokers are experiencing it as well, and so are the carriers, and so is the shipper. So those are the hot buttons. Those are the questions you want to ask in your prospecting calls to try to understand how you can add value, right?
Yeah.
Like that's tremendously helpful.
You're absolutely correct. So the next one on our list is trade shows and industry events. So it's almost the same thing as social media, but you're actually doing it in person, right? Now, there is a cost to go to a trade show, and there is a lot of time taken up to go to a trade show, right? So it's a big commitment. And I would highly encourage you, if you're going to go to a trade show, you need to be ready and committed for it because there's a lot that goes on at these trade shows. You're going to meet a lot of people. If you don't know the kind of person you're looking to talk to, it's a waste of your time. You might connect with some guy you had a great conversation with and you're having beers with him or whatever, right? Grabbing dinner. Hey, he's got nothing to do with transportation for a certain company. But I will say that trade shows are a great way to get in-person interaction. And I'm talking about like industry-specific trade shows. For example, if you work in let's say you move produce, there are so many growers conferences, and they can be even specific to a certain niche. They're like, let's say you want to ship carrots.
Citrus growers.
Whatever. Growers, yeah, citrus, whatever. Right? You're in Florida. They have trade shows, and they're not designed to network with brokers. They're designed for all kinds of other people or all kinds of other vendors there that can help out, whether it's technology or software or insurance or the latest chemicals. But the key thing for you is to go be that freight broker there, to go and kind of be the not normal person, right? You're not trying to sell them insurance. You're not trying to sell them something that they don't already use.
That's like the best scenario too.
Yeah, you're trying to go there and they're already spending money on what you have to offer. The difference is you can find out in person, talking to them face to face, what issues they're seeing, what they're going to project down the road. And you're going to likely have a lot less competition at a trade show as a freight broker than the 50 people that call them every single day and never get through to that decision maker. So you typically tend to have important people at trade shows, not just a gatekeeper or something like that. So
So one, it's a great way to introduce yourself. And I think your point is one that I want to like really drive home. You can go to a trade show and come back absolutely empty-handed and have wasted your money and your time. You should have an objective before you go, right? And it doesn't have to be like really complicated. Like it could just be, I want to meet 10 shippers. I want to meet 20 shippers. I want to meet a few other companies that are similar to the ones I'm already working with. It might be you want to go meet whatever that is, right? Have some objective and go in and make sure you are also, this is another tip I got from somebody else, was take notes for yourself, either throughout the day or at the end of the day, because it is amazing how many times you will have a good or effective conversation and you just forget everything you talked about because you meet so many people, one after another, booth after another. Like create like whether it's just the notes in your phone, anything, and just keep some pertinent information just like you would in a sales call, because that is going to be so tremendously effective a week or two later when you go to call these people. Hey, Bob, I remember we were chatting. Hey, I know you said you had your son's T-ball game this weekend. And again, it doesn't really matter what is said. It just matters that you wrote it down so you can recall it later when you call them. And again, it doesn't have to be word for word, everything you talked about. just high points, because when you do call them later, right, they're way more likely to take your call than the person that has never met them, right? And that's the real benefit there too.
So I'll add in as a final caveat to what you said, or I guess more of like an add-on, is there are so many trade shows for so many different things every single year all over the country. And trade shows are there because those organizations that host them, they have to make money somehow, and they charge for sponsors. They charge for admission to have a booth or a tabletop or whatever it is, right? They're making money doing this. So unless you're going to produce revenue by going to a trade show, you shouldn't do it. I have literally seen somebody at a trade show. I didn't see them at the trade show. I saw their booth, and they weren't there the entire day. They just had a fishbowl and said, drop your business card for a chance to win whatever it was. They never spent any FaceTime with anybody. Sure, people threw gift or business cards in because they wanted a chance to win whatever it was. But when that guy or girl goes to call that business card, that contact, and say, hey, got your card at the trade show, they don't have any experience talking with or meeting that person face to face like they could have had they actually done their job at the trade show and actually networked. So,
well, and to that point, I want to use another recent example, and I want to cover one more thing on trade shows. So I was talking with Dean after Matt's Mid-American Truck Show a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now. And this is somebody, right, that lives in our industry, owns a truck, drives a truck, is an analyst for DAT. And I asked him, how was it after? And he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, I learned so much connecting with people there, drivers, carriers, brokers. It's just also a great way to understand the issues of what people are facing real time, what people are experiencing, what are their problems, what's going well. It's not just negative, right? But it really helps you keep your thumb on the pulse of that industry. Well, Dean's customers are carriers, so that makes a lot of sense, right? He works for DAT. Well, in the same way you go to, we'll say maybe like a citrus or a produce trade show, just to keep the example the same, you want to start having conversations around these things. Hey, like, what are some issues that maybe you guys struggle with? Hey, if you could wave a magic wand and everything would be perfect, what would be the first thing that you would change maybe in like the brokers or the carriers you work with, right? Where are some of your frustrations? That sounds very obvious on a phone and very salesy, but when you are face to face with somebody and you're genuinely connecting with them, you're going to get some real answers, and you're going to get a much better understanding of the pros and cons of that niche, what they're looking for, and how you can add value as brokers. The other thing I wanted to add too, before we go to the next one, is trade shows themselves are good prospects. Just pull up lists of trade shows. You can get the attendees, and you can actually ship products to the trade shows and from the trade shows.
Yes.
And they themselves can be customers. I had a load. I told you this the other day. I had one like 2 weeks ago for a forwarder that had a client that ran a trade show, and we ran a few loads for them for the trade show. Pretty high margin stuff. Can be a pain in the ass. That's why it pays a little better than some other things. But you can make decent money just honestly working with trade shows.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Because that stuff, we've talked about this before and recently too, it's got to get to its next place on time. Because if that trade show leaves Las Vegas and has to get to Chicago or Philadelphia for 2 days later or whatever it is, and it's not there, that trade show is not going to happen the way it's meant to. It's intended to happen. So.
Same on the pickup side. Like my load, we had to pick it up on, I think, a Thursday. Check-in time was by 10 a.m. And we were asking, well, hey, if the driver's late, can we load tomorrow? They're like, there is no pickup tomorrow. Every single thing has to be picked up today. So just in the same thing, it needs to be delivered by a date. Otherwise, the company that spent upwards of 10 grand probably to be there lost a day. Getting it out of it is absolutely as time sensitive as getting it there. So those are things that bode really well for like profitable freight from brokerage or carriers for that matter.
Yep. All right. Our next one is everyday item. So think about it. I don't have the exact stat, but the majority of stuff that we consume on a daily basis, it is moved at some point on a truck. Think about what you use every day. It could be something, a beverage that you drink, food that you eat, a pen that you're signing something with, the car that you drive, the produce that you consume at a grocery store, your sunglasses, right? Golf clubs. I don't care what it is. It's moved on a truck most likely at some point in time. And those are great ways to generate new leads for you. So there are people that will go to a grocery store and just look at the back of the label, and they'll see where was it manufactured or distributed or anything like that. And that's where they get their leads from. And that's not a bad way to go about doing it. But literally, there's pros and cons. The pro is there's almost an endless amount of leads when you generate leads this way, right? Because literally, I look around me and I'm like, there's 100 things that I can look at in the next 1 minute, right? The downside is you can get almost overwhelmed with the amount of things, and they're not always all related to each other. So you kind of might start to get disorganized and not know where to go next. So, use it to your advantage, but don't let it take over your world. Don't walk through the grocery store for 6 hours taking pictures of labels. It's not the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think where it becomes most effective is that we talk about this a lot in the show, is that this is a job that kind of doesn't stop ever, literally and figuratively. If you're a freight broker, you're probably getting calls at any hour of the day at some point, and any hour and any day of the week. In addition to that, when we say items, we tend to go grocery stores, but I really think it should be expanded to just things that are top of mind or anywhere you are, right? Maybe you're driving past a construction site. Okay. Just keeping an eye on what's moving and what isn't moving, right, can give you some good insight into what you could prospect. You also have home improvement stores. There's tons of things in there, right, that you could look at, that you can prospect. There was one too that I remember years ago. It was was it the red solo cups? I don't know, never really would have thought of that. And I worked with the guy who had that account, and he did really well. And the other one of driving down the road of someone, do you ever see Bob's Barricades? Almost every one of the orange cones or things for construction site or on the highway. If you look at the label on most of them, or the big signs where they move them, there's usually a label on the back. And a lot of them, one of the larger companies in the country is Bob's Barricades, but they don't all say that, obviously. So next time you're sitting in traffic, guess what? That stuff all got shipped there too. It got shipped to that job site. It gets moved to the next one when it's done, and it has to be there when it has to be there. And that is also, I knew somebody that used to move stuff for them, and that was a really profitable customer for them. So again, it's not just when you're shopping. It could literally be when you're sitting in traffic, frustrated, and you're looking out the window. There could be, a 6-figure opportunity staring right back at you.
Yeah, so I mean that kind of bleeds into one of the other 10 items here, which is to keep your eyes open, right? So situational awareness, right? Always have your eyes on a swivel per se, right? Whether, like you said, construction sites, you're driving down the road, you see, they're getting ready to build something. So for example, in my town, they're building an Aldi grocery store in a vacant lot that used to be a farm. Okay, and I was for the last year, I'm like, what are they doing? What's going on here? They're starting to grade the land. There was no discussion about an Aldi going up there. There was no sign that said Aldi was going up there. But I just saw the land was getting graded. There was construction equipment there and whatnot. Had I really done the research on it, I'm sure I could have found out that they were building an Aldi there, right? And knowing that, you could figure out what kind of equipment's going to be used there, what kind of materials are going to be shipped in there. And those are great ways just to get ideas of where there's going to be demand for a certain type of commodity in a certain area. But like you said as well, it goes, it could be if you're at a retail store, and let's say you're at Home Depot or Lowe's, and they have empty shelves of lumber, right? And besides the pandemic, when there was just a shortage of lumber, let's say that they're having issues getting their lumber shipped inbound for a certain, or any other commodity. These identify problem areas for you, and that could mean that maybe Home Depot becomes the prospect for you, or maybe it's a supplier of theirs that becomes a prospect for you. But just, you don't have to be at your desk 9 to 5 to prospect. You could, or to generate leads. You can do this anywhere, anytime, all day long.
Well, and we talked about this physically, but also just when you're reading articles or reading the news, just keeping that awareness up for things that are going to kind of make that light bulb go off. FreightWaves is a great place. In fact, I talked to somebody yesterday that has a very large customer. They moved 600 or 700 loads with them last month. 3 months ago, they weren't working with them at all. The owner of the company saw an article on FreightWaves that said that this large government organization was bringing on new transportation partners, new carriers, and they followed up, and they followed up a few times, turned it into a customer. Now it's one of their most profitable customers, right? And that was an article that was read by hundreds of thousands of people, maybe, definitely thousands of people, but you got to take the initiative, right? Just seeing it isn't good enough. You've got to take it and then do something with it, right?
Yes.
Follow up.
Yeah, shippers aren't typically out there calling freight brokers because they need trucks. They tend to get prospected by freight brokers, so you've got to go out there and take action.
Yes.
Next one we'll hit on is referrals. We'll be kind of brief on this because referral isn't, your first customer is likely not going to be a referral because you have no one to refer you to them. But when we say referrals, we mean things like if you have an existing customer, find out if they know anyone that might also be a good fit for you to work or help move their freight, or maybe a customer that you deliver to of theirs you could be referred to, or maybe it's another branch of theirs that has a different freight manager or traffic manager, or it could be there's a whole bunch of ways. It could be just follow your BOL and see all the places that you're delivering to, your customers, your customers, other branches, stuff like that, right? A referral closes at a just ridiculously higher percentage than any other cold call.
And here's the thing, like we think of referrals, I think most people think of it traditionally. Like somebody told somebody to call me, right? But the number one reason why people don't get more referrals is they just simply don't ever ask.
Yeah.
So you, again, just like you need to reach out when you see an opportunity to try and capitalize on it, you've got to initiate a referral. Do not wait and be passive, hoping they come to you. You should be asking the customers that really appreciate your service and like working with you, hey, is there anybody else that you might know or any other customers you might have that could benefit from the same relationship and the same services we've been able to give for you, right? You would be astounded because most people in shipping that we are working with as our customers, they usually only stay in those jobs for like 2 to 3 years and then they go work at another company. So, they usually have coworkers or good close relationships with other shippers, with their friends they used to work with. And again, just asking that question is going to help you get more of them. And I think the other thing too that I want to drive home is exactly what you just said. Like the lowest hanging fruit is to go through the places you've delivered. Now, it's not technically a referral, but you can kind of create the same environment by calling them and saying, hey, we've got a mutual customer in common. We delivered there a few times. We both work with ABC, whatever. They've been working with us for years. We thought it might be a good fit. Wanted to see if we could have a conversation with you. That lead in is just the easiest opening. And it's so much easier as a phone call to make than to cold call someone you've never talked to, right? You already have something to say. They've got a reason why they should listen to you a little bit. That's the hardest part, is to just get the door open a little bit and to initiate it. These are so much easier conversations to have than trying to, cold call lift from nothing, right?
Absolutely. 100%. And that could even be, you have a friend that works at a company and they can refer you to whoever works in logistics over there. So
that's a big one too that most people don't think of. Well, I don't know anybody that's in shipping. Well, do you know anybody that works at a company that is a manufacturer, which is the next one, or a distributor? Yeah. And it's like, well, they don't need to be in shipping, but a warm email from your buddy that sends it over to the logisting, you're going to be way more likely 100%. To get into a conversation.
And again, you can use a lot of these different ways that we're talking about, and you can use them in conjunction with one another, right? So it's not just, I have to go to a trade show and do nothing else. No, you can kind of use it all together. So the next one on our list is manufacturers and distributors, right? This sounds kind of obvious, but the key thing to think about here is if they produce something that has to get shipped, there is a possibility that they're going to use a freight broker at some point in time, right? Yeah. So think about your large distributors, manufacturers, right? You've got raw materials, right? So your basic, it could be literally trees, the first stage of lumber, right? They come off of, they get ripped out of the ground or whatever. I don't know how the lumber world works at forestry, and people are probably going to laugh at me right now, but they chop down a tree and it runs through a thing and it gets thrown on a truck, right? Then it goes to a place that cuts it into something, right? And then it gets moved somewhere else where it gets made into X, Y, or Z. And then it gets moved somewhere else, maybe where it gets turned into a finished product. Every point along that process where they're manufacturing or distributing a product, there's a truck either delivering to or picking up from that facility. There's literally hundreds of thousands of these locations.
Well, I think that's another real big opportunity that most newer brokers don't think about. And again, they call it a supply chain. It's only a chain if it is connected, right? If it's not a chain. There are then two chains, right? Well, and that's a great example where most people just look at prospects as one, make a call, make a call. But if you can work your way through the supply chain with prospecting phone calls, you have better conversations, you can add more value, and they're more effective. And that's a great example, right? Maybe you're starting at the top where you're talking to people that ship green lumber. Well, then you find out, well, they all ship to the same types of facilities. Well, then you prospect them and you find out, oh, they all ship to the same types of facilities. This is the chain of supply that they refer to, right? It's a chain. These buildings aren't physically next to each other where they like literally take the wood and give it to the next company that does it. We are the ones that bridge that gap. We're the ones that take it from the one place to the next so it can become a finished good. So when you're able to have conversations with everyone along the line, you're one, able to understand that industry supply chain much better, which allows you to have better, more well-rounded conversations. But it also allows you to ask better questions to find where the opportunity is for you to add the most value as well.
So it reminds me when we talked with Trent Johnson at Lumber Blue Book about a month or so ago. It blew my mind, right? Because I've never done much work in the lumber industry, and he was talking about all the different kinds of woods, all the different stuff it's used for. And I'm like, I never would have thought about that. And even like like the ad read says, 23,000 lumber companies that are just in their database, plus everyone that's not in their database. Just it's remarkable how big this whole thing is. The opposite of big, let's look at small companies. This is another good target area. So It could be a brand new mom and pop shop that opened up that makes widgets, or it could be any other smaller to medium sized company that maybe does not have, or likely does not have their own dedicated traffic department. Probably doesn't have the resources to, get a large carrier network. An example of this in the town near where I grew up, there's a small machine shop. And when I first started in the industry, I worked for an LTL asset-based carrier. And my brother worked at this machine shop with one of his friends. And I got to meet like the owner and him and, all that good stuff. And we talked about trucking a little bit. I wasn't in freight brokering yet. But I asked, and I kind of asked like how their shipments went. And they didn't ship a lot. They didn't ship too often, maybe a few a week. But they just had the same LTL carrier come in and out of there every single week because they didn't know anybody else existed. Mm-hmm. They just thought that, this person, approached us when we opened up and they've been delivering our stuff.
It's worked.
Sure, it's not 100% perfect, but they just didn't know that anybody else was out there. So if you can find these smaller businesses, right, that maybe they don't know any different when it comes to rates or service, or if it's LTL and they're paying crazy prices and they could possibly partial it out or something, whatever the case might be, they don't know that unless you have a conversation with them. So I think that small businesses are a highly underutilized form to find new businesses as a broker. Obviously, the downside is they're not going to have a large volume of freight. But if you have a good connection with them and they grow and you grow with them, that is huge. So.
Yeah, to this day, I'm still almost somewhat jealous. There was a woman that worked in the company when I first started, and she found one of these smaller, I would say it's like smaller to medium sized businesses, and like one call close, right? And I think they did like $500,000 in like gross profit in the first year for all the reasons you just described. They didn't really look at rates, and it wasn't that like they were taking advantage of it, just they wanted good service. They were willing to pay for it. Their customers were willing to pay for the shipping because they wanted it there on time. So it just worked out for everybody. But I mean, like you're talking about like, those are just like, I feel like 1 in a million opportunities, but they're really not 1 in a million. They really are very prevalent if you put the time in. And if you can establish, like you said, these relationships, they can be very profitable and very beneficial for everybody involved, right? For the shipper, the customers, the broker, and the carriers.
So I'm going to add on to that. So think about like right now. Okay. So first of all, those are some of the most loyal customers you'll have because you'll get to know them like a human being and not like a corporation. But think about how many businesses were started during COVID, right? And someone might have been really good at starting a business but they don't understand transportation and logistics. But they've got this great person that they have been working with that's been getting them trucks, and now rates have gone down, and maybe that small business owner has no idea that rates went down. They've had their go-to person that's now gouging them for freight rates. If you go in there, you're like, what? You're paying $5 a mile to get this shipped out of here? Man, the going rate is half of that right now. So this is a great time specifically for those situations. If you can come across one where they had a go-to person and they're kind of getting taken advantage of right now, you can come in there and be their knight in shining armor.
Absolutely. Chamber of Commerce is a good place to find some of these too. Lots of smaller businesses typically are members. Just using Google, the map view or the business listing is another good way to find some of these smaller businesses as well. They're definitely out there. When you do find them and you're able to have conversations, you can have much better relationships, but it does take a little bit of work to pull some of them together, but it's worth it. Let me ask
you this. Do you guys have Rotary clubs in Florida? Is that a thing?
I know what they are, but I don't know if they're down. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I know they're prevalent up in the Northeast.
Okay.
I don't know if I've seen one down here though, now that you say
so that. Maybe it's a Northeast thing, because like Rotary clubs are it's kind of like a chamber of commerce, but it's it's a bunch of business owners that get together and kind of they do stuff to share best practices, but they have like member lists. So like every year, it's funny. My wife's cousin is owns a small business in a town near us, and she puts out like a fundraiser every single year, and it's like a quiz night where you go and they do like trivia and stuff like that. But there's always like a raffle for like gift baskets and all that. So for like the last 5 years in a row, I've gone there as like the random freight guy and like sponsored a basket, and everyone's like, "What is this? Who's this guy right here?" But there's like little ways to like plant seeds, you know what I mean, and get involved with small business owners that maybe they're not shipping truckloads right now, but it's great to network and get to meet them now before their stuff kind of takes off versus being on the outside wishing you were on the inside. So,
and to be honest, these days, smaller businesses could actually have some pretty large volumes. They might not even be coming out of the same place where the local business is, right? Like,
that's
you never
true.
know. I mean, you could talk to somebody that seems like they got a 3-person office and they're like, yeah, we've got a 50,000 square foot warehouse in Indiana and we ship 50 truckloads a week out of it. I mean, you really just don't know these days. So many people working from home and not having to physically be in the same place. I wouldn't assume anything until you ask.
So that brings up one of our other ones on the list here is networking, right? So it could be events like that. So I had listed down here, Chamber of Commerce meetings. If you're in the Northeast, Rotary Club events, I guess, business events, industry conferences, all that stuff, right? Where are the people that you want to do business with? Where do they hang out, right? If it's at a certain conference or an event or in a virtual group, at a fundraiser, at a charity golf tournament. I have literally had numerous conversations with people that control freight or are the boss of a person that controls freight on a golf course in my golf league, and literally just at a bar and grill, like a place where I'm grabbing
I got a customer going, and this is years ago when my son was in high school, going to dinner to meet my son's friend's parents. And ended up with a customer that was, by the way, a wood manufacturer. Actually, they were an importer and literally didn't expect it, didn't think of it. But to your point, asked a couple follow-up questions. I was like, hey, while we're here, who does handle your shipping over there? He's like, oh, yeah, give Jay a call. I'll send him an email right now, and he'll give you a call on Monday. And again, because that's the hardest thing, right? Like the hardest part about prospecting, it's not the shipping things. It's not the rates. It's not the lanes. It's not what people that are new to this industry think it is. It's really just getting somebody to be your friend and to trust that you're going to do what you're going to do, that you say you're going to do, right? And when you are meeting somebody in person, that is just a much higher bar, especially when you're being introduced, to your point, through some mutual friend, or they've seen you, they know someone that's worked with you that can speak to your character. Those are the things that exponentially put you in a different category, that just allows them to give you a load or two much sooner than somebody you called that has never seen you, doesn't know you from anything, and hasn't ever met you.
Yep, absolutely. It's funny, like for a friend of mine that I've known since I was probably like 10. I knew his dad worked for like some company in our area for a while, and he was in operations. I knew there was like forklifts and stuff involved, but I never really knew what he did. And I went to a charity golf tournament, like I think it was 2 summers ago, and it wasn't even for his dad; it was for his mom, who was like a teacher somewhere. But I was talking with his dad, and we were just talking about like work and whatnot, and he basically runs operations for this entire plant. And we're talking about freight and logistics and whatnot. He's like, give me your card, or like, just, give me the best contact information for you, and I'll give you something for us too. He's like, we have to have at least 100 trucks in and out of our location every single week. He's like, it's at least worth a conversation to see if things are going good, or if there's room for improvement. And I was like, for 20 some years, I had no idea that this was like a possibility. You know what I mean? But it's all about who you know, right?
That's it. And to be honest, right, like that's the point that I also want us to get across, is that like there's probably people you already know. It might be it's your cousin, maybe it's your friend, maybe it's your sister's boyfriend. It doesn't matter. Just like you've got to ask and initiate these conversations, and you have to be proactive about it. You've got to take the initiative. They're not going to come to you.
Yep, exactly. The last, we got 2 more here, and then a bonus one at the end. This one real quick, publishing content. So you want to make sure that if your goal is to have a presence online, whether it's your website or a social media group that you host or whatever, it's a great way to showcase your talents and abilities and to network, right? Make sure if you're going to use publishing content as a way to try and attract customers or gain validity with prospects, make sure what you're posting is accurate. Because I have seen people that have posted inaccurate information, and it's
just the opposite.
Really, really bad. Yeah. But yeah, you can do like some people. Actually, I came across a dude on LinkedIn like the other day or maybe last week that he does like a 2-minute little video every single day. I see it on my feed, and it's about some product or service that he does, but you kind of like, I see it all the time, and I'm like, this guy's kind of likable. If I ever, needed that, I'd probably reach out to him at least, you know what I mean? But that's like a simple way to go about doing it. I'll tell you, like Desmond Clark doing a great job he's got his podcast. He's doing like a lot of social media stuff. He's getting a great reputation in the industry on social media. It's not a direct way to necessarily get customers, but it's a great way to leverage other avenues to reinforce your credibility, is the way that I would look at it.
Yep, absolutely.
Last one, collaborate with other carriers and logistics companies. You mentioned forwarders before, so think about this. Let's say like co-brokerage agreements are huge, right? You might have a transportation company that does not have capacity in whatever they need, and they want to co-broker out for additional capacity. Boom, prospect right there. Freight forwarders, they're great at maybe ocean, air, expedite, customs brokerage, but domestic over the road, not really their niche. They would rather have somebody else take the time to go and do that and make a little margin on it. So that's another great one. Drayage, right? Your customer is another logistics provider, right? A steamship line. Brokerages. So those are great ways.
I mean, I started my career prospecting other brokerages for co-brokerage agreements because just not many people would do it. And the other thing that I learned was, the other motivation was, what are the 2 metrics that are usually tracked when you're in a new sales role? Like call time and amount of calls, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, when you're new, you don't have anybody to talk to. So every phone call is a cold call, right? So most of them are very short. And like maybe if you're making 80 or 90, like you have like 2 or 3 conversations, some are like moments, right? They're not very long. So I'm like, well, I'm not even able to really have conversations that are have any meaning or of any duration. I'm like, how can I get better at this? And I'm like, well, I at least know that I can talk about what's going on here. And I'm like, I feel like I could probably talk to somebody else about what they're doing as it relates to covering trucks, because that's how I learned how to do it first, right? Like covering loads, that's all you do all day. And I was able to have really good conversations with other brokers. And then I was just looking for ways to add value to them, right? Like, hey, how would we be able to help you if we could? And turns out there's quite a few, right? Like most existing brokerages have access to freight that they don't want to move or aren't moving because they don't have enough people to move it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? They're maybe working with their more profitable customers. They have long since stopped taking the freight where they were only making 10 or 11%. But a new broker we'll take that all day long, right? Somebody else's trash is somebody else's gold. Yep. And I used to position it like, look, you probably have more freight for your customers. It would probably make you look much better if you moved a higher percentage. What if we looked at a way where I had a co-brokerage, covered the loads you guys don't want to work on? I will be completely transparent. You guys can check all the carriers, do whatever you need to your customer. You'll look twice as effective as you have ever been. And then once we get to that number, hire a third or fourth person, take the freight back, and then go take more. And I'll keep subsidizing your growth, right? And I had a handful of customers. I was able to get to a 6-figure income within 6 months as a freight broker, just working with other freight brokers at first, right? And then once you learn their customers and the other niches and the other industries, then you could branch from there. But I mean, it is definitely, I think, a very valuable category that is often overlooked.
Absolutely. So there's your 10 ways to find shippers. But wait, there's a bonus. Chat GPT. Dude, I did this literally. We were on a call with TIA, I think it was last week. And we were talking about the same topic, right? Different ways to prospect and find new shippers. And the cool thing was we talked with people that had been in the industry for a while, right? The one person was in there like 20-something years. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about is what they're doing. You know, their trade shows and referrals and databases and stuff. We didn't even talk about databases, but there's all kinds of ways. But then I was like, let me try ChatGPT. And literally during the call, I went to ChatGPT and I was like, name me the top 10 steel companies in the U.S. Boom, listed them out. Boom, give me more. Boom, listed out 20 more. And I was like, give me 30 more. And it gave me a list of, in total, the top 50 steel companies in the United States in a matter of like 12 seconds. And I was like, the way that automation and artificial intelligence is developing now, there's going to be a lot of really effective ways to find leads now. Like, think about like even a more manual process. Like we had Paul from Freight Caviar on with Shipper CRM. He's finding a new way to kind of bridge that gap between I don't know who to call or anything about this company. He's finding a way to do that. I think that AI is going to have a huge impact in getting us information super fast.
Yeah, and I'll give you, so I was talking to you about this yesterday. Google's Bard is available now. I think it was released at I/O last week, their conference. And Google's large language model, it's similar to ChatGPT, but Bard is connected to the internet real time. So you can use Bard and ask it, and it can search the live internet, where ChatGPT, I think, only goes to 2020 or 2019. It's like 2 or 3 years old. Bard is live to the internet, and you can export the data directly into a Google Doc. So to your point, and I know ChatGPT can do this as well, but it also can give you some more up-to-date stuff that is similar to what Google does. And then you can press the Google it button or the export and get normal traditional Google results alongside it. And it is a great tool for research. Just to your point, finding names, finding bigger companies, getting some stats on, just understanding their size, who are maybe some of the other companies that work closely with these companies. Again, use your imagination. Think outside the box when using these tools, right? Think to ask questions other than just list these shippers. Like, okay, who do these companies typically work with maybe? Who are companies that who are the most common vendors of some of these companies, right? So you can find some of their customers that work with them. And
what I thought was cool about the way that I asked the question to ChatGPT, it gave me not just 50 shippers, it gave me like number 1, Nucor, right? And I think Steel Dynamics was like number 2 or 3. It gave me the name of the company, where they're based out of, and a brief like 1 to 2 sentence summary on the specific commodity that they move or like the part of the industry that they work in. And I was like, this is amazing.
That's fantastic. And that was the follow-up I was going to say is once you get the companies, ask what specifically they are shipping and how that is different from their other companies that have been listed. Because if you can get that type of insight, that is going to make a tremendous prospecting call if you're able to.
You got to start charging a boatload for the access to these kind of tools, man. I feel like it's so valuable.
Oh, so valuable.
Let's see. All right. All right. Give a shout out to our friends at Lean before our Q&A. Are you looking to take your freight brokerage or agency to the next level? Look no further than Lean Solutions Group. They are industry leaders in nearshore staffing for logistics companies with offices located in South America, Mexico, and the Philippines. They offer a wide range of exciting positions, including freight broker back office operations, accounting, tech and web development, business development, marketing, customer service, and more. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best in the business. Visit their website at www.leangroup.com to learn more about the exciting solutions they have to offer your brokerage or agency. Our first question, and I apologize if any of this has incorrect grammar. I copied and pasted directly. These came in directly to us all this week. First one said, factoring companies won't work with my brokerage because I don't have established credit. The factoring companies are the only people that report to the credit agencies. Any solutions? Not true. I don't. A carrier would also report to a credit agency.
If you ask them to. They don't have to.
We covered this briefly last week, and my answer is still the same. If a factoring company won't work with you, get on the phone with a human being and ask them why. And ask them, what is it that you need to see from me? Do you need a reference? The reality is, if your credit history is that crappy, why would anyone want to work with you? You probably shouldn't be in the line of business that involves, cash flowing and owing monies to people.
And if you're in that... And if that's the case, I mean, we covered this too in the Desmond Clark episode. I mean, you can put some cash up front. You can talk through these things with factoring companies, where I know a couple other people we've had on have gone to the factoring companies and like, hey, what if we just give you 10 grand? And then, you give us a little bit, or you give us 5 grand.
It's like a secured line of credit or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think another obvious solution is, if that is really that much of an issue, like, maybe look to work as an agent until you can improve your credit, and then go back to running your own brokerage, which is another kind of obvious option. Like, you can run a very profitable agency without having to deal with any of the payables, any of the receivables, or any of the funding of any of this.
Yep, exactly. All right, next question. And I'm not really sure how this reads, but what's the risk? I have a carrier authority and a separate brokerage authority. I set up the carrier authority with shippers because they require that insurance. I can't afford a brokerage authority liability insurance policy yet. I still broker the loads for the shipper, but they pay my carrier business. Thanks. Well, what you just described was double brokering.
Yes, you're double brokering.
I don't want to call it double brokering. What you just described was illegal brokerage activity. So you accept a load as a shipper, but then you broker it out. I'm sorry, you accept a load from a shipper as a carrier, and then you broker it out. That's what's called illegal brokerage, according to the FMCSA. What I will say, because I work for a company that has both an asset company and a brokerage company, if a customer has crazy red tape that says you need to be asset-based for us to onboard you, and that's just our policy, and you want to onboard as a asset-based company, yet run freight through your brokerage. If you are transparent with your contacts at your company, and it's like via email, like, yeah, we'll onboard our asset company, but we're going to broker these loads out through our brokerage, right? And there's a paper trail of that. You're going to save yourself some issues there and some liability down the road. The risk here is, if you're going to advertise yourself as a carrier, but you're going to operate as a broker, you could run into some serious liability if there's an accident, or imagine an accident, someone dies, right?
It happens.
They're going to treat you like the carrier.
Yes.
So huge issue. And if you can't afford liability insurance for your brokerage, it's not that expensive, first of all, depending on your size. But if you can't afford that liability insurance, you probably shouldn't be working in the brokerage space. So, yes. But also remember, your authorities to keep your insurance costs down should be separate. Your brokerage company and your asset company, separate MCs most likely. They're going to be looked at on a risk evaluation scale separately, because they're two separate companies. So, but don't do what that guy or gal just described there. Last one, again on insurance. Where can we purchase insurance for contingent cargo, all risk, and general liability? Well, all risk specifically, we had an episode with LoadSure They're a partner of DAT, and if you have DAT, you can go right to the tools on the DAT1 homepage, and there is an insurance section on there, and LoadSure is right in there. You can do it right through there. You can put your card number in to pay for the per load policy. When it comes to contingent cargo and your regular liability policies or anything, right? We don't have like a trusted partner that sells it, but
we have somebody we can refer them to. I mean, I've done an episode with him, Cameron Pescia. He owns Valley Trucking Insurance. It's a brokerage. You can reach out to him. I usually refer most people.
Well, that's the key, though, I would recommend to go to an insurance brokerage.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Reason being, like Cameron, who we had on here, great episode. Check that one out if you want to learn about insurance. He can shop all those policies at different insurance carriers. The same way that a freight broker is the middleman between the shipper and the motor carrier, an insurance broker is the middleman between the insured party and the insurance carrier that actually underwrites the policy. And they go out there and shop all the different policies for you. So, good questions. We appreciate all of them. We did not have to even go to our Facebook page or Reddit or anything this week. You guys just loaded us up with questions, so we do appreciate it. Next week will be an episode on produce with Jeff from Produce Blue Book, so I look forward to that one. That's all I got, Ben. What do you got? Anything else?
That's it, man. Our gentleman's agreement. Just like all the other content out on YouTube, our content isn't actually free. We put a ton of time and a ton of work into this. The only thing we ask for you to pay for this is that you just slow down for a minute and hit the subscribe button or hit the like button. That's all we need. That helps us create more content and give you guys all what you're looking for at no monetary cost, right?
Just share it with someone else that you work with.
Send it to somebody you know. Absolutely.
Any final thoughts?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.